everyone, and welcome to another Monday Night Travel Destination Duel with Rick Steves Europe. I'm Julianne Worden, along with Gabe Gunning, Ben Green, and special guest Marta Shahazizian, fun last name, on Monday Night Travel. And tonight we are battling Prague and Budapest in what Rick Steves Europe once called Eastern Europe. We are now calling Central Europe.
For those of you that tuned into our first two destination duels, we had Paris versus London, and we had the Cinque Terre versus the Amalfi Coast. You know the format, but for those of you that are new, we are going to be debating these two cities across four main topics. We're going to debate art and architecture, activities, cuisine, and day trips. At the end of each category, you will have a chance to vote, and each category will count for 15% of the total score. Then at the very end, after our closing statements, we are going to have a final overall impression vote that counts for 40% of the total score, and we will finally declare a winner in which one of these two great Central European cities is just slightly greater. So we are going to put on our boxing gloves, our dueling. What do people wear for duels?
I was thinking a joust earlier.
I want to get our jousts ready. I like that. We're going to get our jousts ready. And we are going to start things off with our opening statements. So Team Prague will start, and then we will move along to Team Budapest. So let's get things started. Good luck to everyone. All right. So I would like to start out by saying how excited I have been to argue on behalf of Prague since we determined this topic, because I remember my first time in Prague, and never before in a large city in Europe have I felt so immediately transported to a different place and time. I've been to a lot of charming and characteristic small towns and cities in Europe, England's York, Germany's Rothenburg, France's Albi, but never have I seen so much characteristic charm sustained so consistently and on such a large scale until when I went to Prague. Prague is truly a fairy tale. And what do fairy tales require? They require castles. And guess what? Prague has one of the largest castles in the entire world. It requires fair maidens. The Mucha Museum is brimming with them. It requires romance. Prague has opportunities for romance around every corner. It requires sweet treats, and Prague has enough of them to entice an entire army of Hansels and Gretels. And if you look very carefully, it requires a lot of color. And if you look very carefully, you might even be able to find a Prince Charming while you're there. So whether you want beautiful rooftops, moving music, charming art, or just a scenic place to stroll, Prague can be the fairy tale city for you on your next trip.
Well, I didn't need a Prince Charming when I was visiting Prague back in 2015. I was there with my aunt going down from Berlin. And I thought it was funny, here we have actual cameras we were using since it was before the era of smartphones. But what's special about Prague is that it's more than just a fairy tale. It's really a time capsule. It's the most preserved city, best preserved city in Europe after World War II. It was the only city that survived, large city that survived the bombing of World War II. And so as you walk around Prague, you turn any corner and it's like you're being transported into a different era or a different century. And that is a rare thing to find in Europe. And you have medieval, you have Rococo, you have Baroque. I even think in this picture, even the shadows in Prague are whimsical. And some people talk of Prague as if it's an amusement park, but I think an amusement park, around every corner, they have something that will awe you, and it's manufactured to be that way. In Prague, it is that way simply because of its history, and I think that's a pretty amazing thing. You have the architecture, you have the rich cultural history. Here's the Jewish cemetery in the Jewish quarter of town. And it's more than meets the eye. Sure, there's beautiful pastel buildings, but it has a history of perseverance in Prague, and the Czech people are proud of that history. And as you dive in and you explore more, you realize, wow, sure, Prague is beautiful, but here it is. It has survived all of this, and it's still here welcoming us with open arms. And It's a haven for history, and it's kind of whatever tickles your fancy in European history you'll find in Prague.
All right, so we're going to give you a very quick orientation to Prague. Prague used to actually be 4 separate walled towns, and those walls have come down. It's now one city, but those 4 towns now make up the 4 main quarters of Prague, each of which retains its own personality. First, we have the Castle Quarter, which, wait for it, features Prague Castle. It has historically been the home of kings and is still the home of the Czech Republic's president. Nestled just below it, we have the lesser town, which is the diplomatic area studded with embassies. It's a nice place for if you just want to get away from the bustle and have a nice quiet stroll.
Then we hop over and have the Old Town, which has, with the Old Town Square, which has been kind of the heart of Prague since the 11th century. So it is indeed an old town. But what's cool about the Old Town is that it's still the heart of Prague. And when you're there, you can just feel the energy and the activity of centuries of activity. And so it's just special to feel the energy there. You can also feel the pulse of the Vltava River right nearby. And so it's an exciting place to be. It's also home to the Jewish Quarter, which has a rich history of over 1,000 years of the Jewish people. And we'll speak about that later this evening. There's also the New Town, which is known mostly for Wenceslas Square, which was the site of the Velvet Revolution in 1989. And there's a National Museum as well, the Mucha Museum. There's some communist era sites and buildings and some shopping, which this necklace here was from a shopping center in the New Town of Prague. And so there's a little bit of something for everyone in Prague as well.
So we look forward to giving you a more in-depth tour soon, but for now, we are going to turn it over to our colleagues for their opening statement on Budapest.
Thank you very much, Julianne and Gabe. I will steal the screen share. Welcome to Hungary, right in the middle of Central Europe. This country packs a powerful cultural punch. More than 1/5 of the country's population lives in Budapest, and Marta and I are so excited to take you along to show you why Hungarians love their capital and why this is one of the most underrated cities in Europe. While Prague sits on the Vltava, Budapest is separated by the mighty Danube. The Danube serves as a division between the Buda and Pest sides of the cities. Today, they are joined by numerous bridges. Budapest is also known for, as you see here, its fantastic nighttime lighting, and we will talk more about that later. The larger Pest side of central Budapest is its more commercial area, full of shops, restaurants, museums, and more. The main drag, as you can see it here, that gray area, that line, is Andrassy Boulevard. It travels from near the Danube all the way to the city park and Széchenyi Baz on the other end. The Buda neighborhood on the other side of the Danube offers charming cobbled streets and grand medieval monuments. Budapest is a large city, but very easy to manage. Its relative size also means that tourists are more spread out and not massed into a small area. Like Prague, Budapest has a grand and ancient history. Budapest has been literally turning heads for centuries. Hungary's origins date back to the Magyar tribes who trace their roots to the Ural Mountains and the Volga River region. They arrived in the 9th century and set the story of Hungary in motion. There are 14 statues that you see here, and each one represents an important figure in Hungarian history. This is actually Hero Square at the end of Andrassy Boulevard, and in the center is Arpad, the head of the Magyars of the Confederation, and he is considered by many Hungarians to be a founder of the country. Budapest, by the way, is a city of monuments. It has more than 1,200 of them. A city of some 2 million people, Budapest, of course, has a strong transit system that visitors can enjoy. A single ticket on Budapest Transit is currently around 350 forint. That's right, Hungary doesn't use the euro, they have their own currency. 350 forint is about $1. I think that's a pretty good value compared to what most European cities, a single ticket public transportation costs. And a 24-hour unlimited transportation card is about 1650 forint, which is about $5. This is certainly a reminder that Budapest offers very reasonable prices, all lower than the Western European average and lower than Prague. The M1 metro line, which runs underneath Andrassy Boulevard, is the oldest metro on the European continent. Only the tube, I believe, or a section of the tube in London is older. The Hungarians were definitely thinking ahead when it came to public transit. This system whisks locals and travelers around the city very easily. Budapest's tram network is also fantastic. The popular Line 2 tram runs along the Danube and offers sweeping views. Views from the tram include historic buildings and sites, including the Parliament, Budapest bridges, the Buda Castle district, and Gellert Hill. Speaking of Parliament, the fantastic Hungarian Parliament is the third largest Parliament building in the world. Like many other structures in the city center, it dates from the era around 1896, when Hungary was celebrating its 1000th anniversary. 1000 years since the Magyars you saw earlier helped to settle in Hungary. As you'll see, a lot of important structures in Budapest are from that era. In fact, the Parliament building has 96 front steps and is 96 meters tall. So people in Budapest really value that year, 1896. Jewish heritage in Budapest is very powerful and dates back many centuries to when a community was formed in the Buda neighborhood in the 12th century. The Great Synagogue that you see here is the largest synagogue in all of Europe. It's a reminder that in the 19th century, over a quarter of the city was Jewish. The synagogue's tree of life on the sites of mass graves of those killed by the Nazis serves as a powerful reminder and memorial. The willow makes an upside-down menorah, and each individual leaf lists the names of a victim. Budapest's historic Jewish roots present travelers with a powerful story. On the hilly Buda side sits the royal palace, marking the place where one of Europe's mightiest castles once stood. Since the 14th century, Hungary was ruled from this spot. Eugene of Savoy, the general who had great success fighting the Hungarian enemies, the Ottomans, is situated on horseback here. Budapest's hilly surrounds, tree-lined vistas, and turn-of-the-century buildings make it a city ripe for exploration. Marta and I are ready to party like it's 1896.
That's right.
This nation is one of my favorite destinations, and I'm excited to share with you why Budapest is one of the best cities in Europe.
We can't talk about Budapest without talking about Hungary's rich and turbulent history of migrating ethnic groups. As Ben mentioned earlier, first the Magyars from Central Asia, then the Turks, Germans, Slavs, then Jews, followed by Nazi rule and then Soviet takeover. This complicated history has resulted in a melting pot of people and culture with influences from both Central and Western Europe. Today, Budapest is a dynamic, multi-layered metropolis offering exceptional beauty and a host of authentic local experiences that are uniquely and unapologetically Hungarian. One example of this are the world-famous thermal baths where you can soak and decompress in the mineral-rich waters. Pictured here are the Grand Széchenyi thermal baths. This was one of my absolute top experiences, not just in Budapest, but in all of my travels in Europe and in the world. There's just so much about Budapest that is unique. Its cuisine, for one, stands out in Central Europe. Unlike a lot of the foods in this greater region, which tend to be starchy and bland, the food in Hungary is robust, is bursting with spices and flavors. Its restaurant and nightlife scene are top among all of Europe as well. Even its language is completely unique. The Hungarian language is not at all related to any Slavic language. In fact, it isn't related to any European language at all, except for its very distant relatives, Finnish and Estonian. But in fact, English is more closely related to Hindi and Russian than it is to Hungarian. Budapest is an absolutely beautiful city, but it really takes the cake as being one of Europe's top cities to see when lit up at night. which you can experience by taking an evening cruise across the magnificent Danube and see both sides of the city sparkle around you. You'll find that there is so much to do that they're really experiencing two cities in one. On the west side of the Danube, Buda, and to the east, Pest. Today, this elegant city offers striking big city viewpoints, vibrant cafe culture. It's a dreamland for foodies, hiking lovers, and history buffs. But it also offers more exotic experiences for those with a broader taste palette, appealing to American travelers who are after something a little more diverse, something different, something a bit spicier. Overall, Budapest is a thriving city worth visiting and revisiting again and again. It is just so multidimensional. There's something for everyone, and there's always something more to experience. And that is why it reigns supreme as the superior Central Europe trip destination.
And we are moving on to art and architecture.
So our first category tonight is art and architecture, a distinguishing element of so many European travel destinations. But between Prague and Budapest, which city does it better?
Thanks, Martha, for introducing this topic. My first visit to Budapest was in 2016 in March during my 6-month study abroad in Poland. And Budapest architecture struck me right away as being extremely unique and one of a kind. There is no other city with a look and feel quite like Budapest. One of those exceptional structures is the Hungarian Parliament building that I mentioned earlier. Its riverside location and neo-Gothic style give it tremendous flair. It too was built around 1896 with 29 staircases, 10 courtyards, 28 entrances, and 691 rooms. We must remember that this building was built to administer not just Hungary, but to assist with the administration of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which Hungary was a junior partner. Visitors are allowed inside of the Parliament building, and most are smart to book ahead in advance. You can take a guided tour or use an audio guide. My favorite way to see the Parliament building, however, is at night along the Danube. Few cities are so spectacularly lit when darkness takes over the sky. I would grab a drink on a Danube cruise or somewhere along the shore and soak in the vibrant experience of Budapest at night. Or perhaps take an evening walk to Castle Hill on the Buda side of the city. In central Budapest, you will actually notice that many buildings are not from the modern era. Projects in Budapest today tend to focus on refurbishment of historical buildings rather than new modern construction. And this maintenance of traditional Hungarian architecture serves travelers well.
So here atop Buda's Castle Hill, we have several architectural marvels. This is Matthias Church, one of Hungary's most important churches, and it is in the heart of the Castle District. It has been destroyed and rebuilt several times in the 800 years since it was founded. And inside, you can ogle at the just absolutely opulent architecture. This is Fisherman's Bastion. It is one of the most unique viewing terraces and another one of Budapest's top landmarks. Its neo-Romanesque architecture features conical turrets, 7 of which represent the original 7 Magyar tribes. In the Middle Ages, the fish market was just below here, and the bastion is actually believed to be named after the guild of fishermen who defended the area from invaders during the Middle Ages. Today, it offers a just fantastic place to enjoy the sweeping views of the Danube and Pest. It's $5 to climb to the top, but several parts of the terrace are free and just as good. And there are several scenic cafes you can enjoy a refreshing drink. And again, those fantastic views of the Pest side.
I really love Fisherman's Bastion.
Me too.
It's excellent. At the Hungarian State Opera House, music rivals that of Vienna. Performances are relatively affordable. I looked just a couple days ago, and a good seat is around 17,000 forint, which is around $50. I think quite a bargain.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't take in a show, you are able to receive a tour of the opera house itself. And actually, I'm going to just prepare a short video for you This fantastic opera singer actually surprised us with a short performance during our tour. So you don't even necessarily have to book a performance, if you're lucky at least, to hear a Hungarian opera singer. Now, the opulence of this opera house is very impressive. It was designed for 19th century socialites to impress. Today, its gilded box seats and velvety theater welcome locals and tourists alike who wish to participate in the splendor of Austria-Hungary.
Well, thanks, Ben. And I would say that sounds like quite a steal for $50. Speaking of music and dance, easily accessed in Budapest is traditional Hungarian folk dancing, such as this one here.
Nightly shows are inexpensive and high-powered, mixing Teutonic-style slap dancing and Slavic Cossack-style footwork.
That looks like one. Okay, and that is our presentation of art and architecture in Budapest. Over to you, Prague.
Whoa. Well, there were some very exciting things in Budapest, but I am excited to see what we have to share in Prague. And I think you can tell if someone's been to Budapest or not by if they say Budapest or Budapest. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Prague was one of the only large cities to have avoided the destruction of bombing in World War II. Interestingly, it also survived a lot of, or the many destructive urban renewal projects of the late 19th century, where cities decided to kind of raze down a lot of the older sections of the towns for practical reasons, because the streets were narrow, they weren't very hygienic, etc. But a lot of this medieval architecture still exists in Prague, and kind of the golden era of Prague was started in the 1300s, or was in the 1300s, and continued along. We'll start with the Powder Tower. This was built in the 1400s, and it was the main gate when this area was walled. The walls are no longer there. However, the Powder Tower has been there since the 1400s. And when you arrive in Prague at the train or bus station and you're walking towards the old town, this is the gate that you walk through. And it almost feels like you're going through a portal. And then as you go out the other side, there you are in Old Town Prague. And you can just imagine all of the historical figures, or just any old visitor like us walking through this tower, and all of the motions that go along with that. And so I think it's special to have places like this that really connect you right back to when it was built. And it's called the Powder Tower simply because it held the city's gunpowder, which didn't seem too safe to me, all your gunpowder in one place, but they worked out for them, apparently. And as you can see, the Powder Tower is over here on the right. And then you walk along down this street, and then all of a sudden it opens up into the Old Town Square. And it's like a bouquet of architecture, because you have the Rococo Palace here, you have the Gothic Bell Square Tower here, and then you have the Teen Church, which is just the pointed spires, is just kind of one of the symbols of Prague. And there's Baroque buildings, the colors, and this is what it was like when they were created, and it's special to be there. In the Old Town Square here, just wanted to mention Jan Hus. This is a Jan Hus memorial, and he was born in the 1300s, 1369, and he challenged the church's power, the Catholic Church. Unsurprisingly, the Catholic Church was unhappy with this, and he was burned at the stake in 1415. But he is a symbol for the Czech of their, well, he's an icon for their long struggle for Czech freedom. And so this is another sign. You see the beautiful buildings in the background. Then here you see Jan Hus, and you are reminded of the struggles that the Czech people have had, and how Prague is kind of a symbol of their victory over their struggles. And so it's important to think of Jan Hus as you're standing in the square. The Teen Church is fascinating because it started out, has that Gothic architecture. Construction started in the 14th century, 1300s. And it's kind of quintessential Gothic because you have those tall pointed spires. Gothic construction is very vertical. There's stained glass windows. In the back, there's some baby buttresses. On the Notre Dame in Paris, for example, they have flying buttresses. They're these dramatic things off of their side. The Teen Church, they're just little baby ones, which is kind of fun to see the different styles there. And the history of this is interesting. It was Catholic, then it was Hussite, and then it was Catholic, because Jan Hus had followers, the Hussites, and then it was back to Catholic again. And there is evidence of both on the interior and exterior of this church. The stone bell house here, I just wanted to mention quickly, it was covered by a Baroque facade, and then they discovered it hidden under this facade that had been put up over the years. And then so they took it down and renovated this well-preserved, well, they just did some renovations, but this well-preserved Gothic building. And so wherever you look in Old Town Square, you're going to be seeing something different, and you have the chance to imagine what it was like at that time. And continuing your little stroll along here, as I mentioned earlier, it's just every corner, there's something else that can awe you. And here is the astronomical clock right next to the teen church, often surrounded by people waiting for it to ring. And this is in the, what is the name here? The Old Town Hall Tower, which was built in the 1350s. The clock was installed in the 1400s, and it has the zodiac signs here down in the bottom. It has the clock up here. It kind of has everything you could need and more to simply tell time. At this time, though, they thought everything revolved around the earth, and so you have the earth there in the middle instead of the sun. And then on the hour, the apostles, 12 apostles come out, a rooster crows, and death rings his bell there, reminding that no one is immune to time, but maybe Prague is immune to time. You continue your walk along here, and another medieval point in Prague is the Charles Bridge. Charles was the ruler of the Holy Roman Empire in the 1400s, or 14th century. And he was born in Prague, and then he came back to rule from there since he loved his city. This bridge was reconstructed starting in the 1300s, as it had been badly damaged by a flood in the past. And it was the only bridge connecting the two sides, or the two areas of Prague, across the Vltava River, which that's the river here, for 400 years. So that's pretty impressive. It was in the 1800s that they built another one. And as you go along the Charles Bridge, there's musicians, there's saints lining either side of the bridge. And it's as if there's artists along the bridge, and the saints are kind of looking down as if they want to join in the fun of being in Prague and being on the Charles Bridge. And again, you can just imagine what it was like having all these people there over the years. And if you're an early bird or a night owl, you can be on the bridge when there's almost no one else and have a moment to yourself with the bridge and with the river.
All right, as Julianne said, Prague was the only major city in Central Europe that avoided the bombing of World War II, making it one of Europe's best preserved architectural marvels. It's also one of the few cities in Europe that can boast buildings from all of Europe's major architectural eras, including Romanesque, Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque, Rococo, but Prague is probably best known for its chic Art Nouveau. At the outset of the 20th century, architects were tired of rehashing older styles, neoclassical this, neo-Gothic that, and they set out to create their own new modern style with fluid lines, natural forms, muted colors, and new building materials like metal, iron, glass, and ceramics. Some of the best examples of Prague's Art Nouveau architecture is the Vinohrady Theater with its winged angels, the Prague train station with its lush embellishments, and the municipal house with its gorgeous lunette mosaic under an inscription that reads, "Hail to you, Prague, resist time and anger in the same way you have resisted all storms." And clearly Prague has obeyed that, and it remains timeless in its Art Nouveau glory.
Speaking of Art Nouveau, a legend of the Art Nouveau era is Alphonse Mucha. He was born in Prague in the mid-1800s. I have the exact, born in 1860, southeast of Prague, farther away from Prague. This is his home. He was seen to be a talented artist at a young age, so he was sent to art school. And in 1887, he moved to Paris, where he worked for some time. He was in art school. And if you see actually this poster behind him, it's kind of neat. This poster shot him to fame pretty much overnight. Sarah Bernhardt was an actress in Paris, and she needed some posters done for some performances. And so Alphonse got in touch with her, and she said, "Sure, you can do one." They put it up, and it was a big hit. And she ordered thousands of more posters, and his style of art caught on. He's known for largely portraits of women surrounded by flowers, and they seem dreamy and ethereal and calming to me, and really timeless art as well. Gustav Klimt, you might be reminded of him looking at this. He was another Art Nouveau artist. Or today, if you're familiar with Kehinde Wiley, to me, this art is kind of timeless. I feel like Kehinde is kind of a continuation of the style of Alphonse Mucha. He returned to Prague after being in Paris for some time to do some projects here. This is in St. Vitus Cathedral, which Gabe will cover more later, but he has just breathtaking stained glass windows here, and those colors, I think this might be one of my favorite pictures ever, because you could just look at those colors forever. There's just a little close-up of the faces and the emotion he captures, and somehow simple looking art, but still powerful. He also took 16 years to work on the Slav epic, which he just wanted to capture the history and the accomplishments and the struggles of the Slavic people. He started work in 1912 and worked on it until 1928. This can now be seen in Prague. It is at the Savarin Palace, and it's called the Slav Epic, and it truly is epic with these just massive canvases and his attention to detail. He was here, Alphonse, he was in Prague in 1930s when the Germans came in, the Nazis came in, and because of his pride with the Slavic people, he was interrogated by the Germans in 1939 at 79 years old. And just a couple weeks later, he died. Interrogation, he was not well after it, and he died after that. And so that's another thing of Prague. You have this beautiful art left over, but you have a sad story for this man. But his art continues on and his legend continues on.
All right, while Art Nouveau may be the most popular thing in Prague, at the turn of the 20th century, there was also a movement across Europe called Cubism. You've probably heard of it. Perspective bending portraits were popping up in Paris, spreading around Europe. But while in much of Europe, Cubism stayed on the canvas, Prague is the only place in the continent that had a Cubist architectural movement. The most iconic Cubist building is the subtly proportion distorting House of the Black Madonna, which is just a 5-minute walk from the Old Town Square and hosts the Czech Cubism Museum, the elegant Black Madonna restaurant, and the Cubist Grand Orient Cafe that serves square rolls. Beyond the Black Madonna, you can see Cubism in the mosaic sidewalks, in the gates, in this Cubist lamppost. Also, just outside of Prague, there were Cubist villas with Cubist facades and Cubist fences on the outside, and Cubist benches and tea sets on the inside. So it's just a lovely quirk of Prague architecture. And while Cubism's impact may not be the same as Art Nouveau's, you can continue to see the impact on modern building projects like this very popular dancing house. And to wrap up our architectural tour of Prague, I just want to finish in Wenceslas Square. Just as the bombs of World War II missed Prague, so even the fall of the Soviet Union was soft on the city. In 1989, 500,000 people flooded into Wenceslas Square for 11 days of protest against the communist government, until the communist government simply resigned in what is now known as the Velvet Revolution. So to repeat the inscription on the municipal house, "Hail to you, Prague, may you resist time and anger as you have resisted all storms." Prague has clearly shown that it is resistant to time, it is resistant to the anger of wars, and it isn't just a time capsule of European architecture, it is European architecture.
And with that, that is all ready. Did you have any more comments
Nope.
on this picture? Okay, with that, it is already time for the first vote. So let me just start off the vote here. Art and architecture, everyone's at home. Budapest, I should say, or Prague. Ben and Marta, what are you guys' thoughts?
Tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the uniqueness of Budapest is a powerful entity, but Prague is beautiful. Prague is very beautiful.
And it's that uniqueness versus kind of more cohesiveness. I feel like Prague just delivers you this thorough and consistent aesthetic.
Yeah.
Well, Budapest is very consistent, and so much of it is late 19th and early 20th century, but Prague is consistent in certain ways. I agree. agree.
All right, I'll just give everyone a couple more seconds here to get your votes in. Then I'll end the poll. I do love the Parliament building in Prague. It is stunning. I mean, in Budapest, it is stunning. Look at that. Okay, I'm going to end it in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, we'll share the results at the end. Okay, great.
All right. So we are now going to continue on to the, oh yes,
Our
Julianne.
activities. So of course, in any place you visit, you want to have things to do, so you're not just kind of bumbling around. And so we're going to dive into our activities.
All right, so we're going to start with Prague, and we are going to start at, I think, the most enjoyable place to visit in Prague, and that is the Prague Castle, perched up on the hill. According to the Guinness World Book of Records, it is the largest castle complex in the world. It includes an old royal palace interior, the royal gardens, a museum on the castle's history, a jaw-dropping cathedral, an old merchant lane. If you want something, Prague Castle probably has it. There's a couple different tickets you can get. The Circuit B ticket is sufficient for most people and gets you into my 2 favorite sites, which are the St. Vitus Cathedral and the Golden Lane. The St. Vitus Cathedral is the national cathedral of the Czech Republic. It is where kings were crowned. It's where the crown jewels are stored. But in my opinion, the real crown jewel is the stained glass. So a series of jaw-dropping chapel windows line the halls of the nave, and they range a variety of styles from more traditional Gothic style to more modern and flowy interpretations. But unsurprisingly, the most popular stained glass window is the one designed by Alphonse Mucha himself. You can see his subtle Art Nouveau touches, and it is just extremely beautiful. But Mucha wasn't the only artist to leave his mark on the Czech castle. Oh, Julianne, you had a quick little note for us.
Well, I do have a little souvenir here from when I was in Prague, and you can climb the tower here, and you're looking down as you're in the tower, and you can see the tiled roofs, and it's an awesome view. And then this is the view from the tower. I love a good tower when I'm in Europe. And this is my little coin, and it says how many steps there is and everything. Just had to throw that in there.
And then a little bit behind the tower, we have the Golden Lane, which was an old merchant lane, used to have a lot of guards and blacksmiths there, but then evolved to house some kind of more bohemian folk. So here is an old blacksmith setup. And then also it was number 22 right there, was home to the author Franz Kafka. So the Prague Castle, again, has everything from blacksmiths to literary history to famous stained glass art.
What did Franz Kafka write?
Metamorphosis.
Well, we are now traveling over to the Jewish quarter in Prague, which the Jewish people first came here in the 10th century, and they were given the worst land in town. It was marshy. It was in this corner of the city, but of course they created something excellent out of it. When you're visiting the Jewish quarter, there are quite a few synagogues to visit. This is the Mazel Synagogue, which is built in the 16th century, and inside it covers the history of the Jewish people in Prague, and so you learn a lot about the culture there. This is the Pinkas Synagogue, which was also built in the 16th century. This one is important to visit because it is a memorial to the Jewish people that were killed by the Nazis in World War II. And you see all of these names on the wall. The red is the family name, and then the black are the people's names. And during World War II, there were 77,297 Czech Jews were killed in the Holocaust. And overhead, as you're standing here, you'll hear the names being read in a somber tone. And so this is an important reminder of the people that were here and who were eradicated, exterminated during World War II, and the culture that is there. You can see what once was. This synagogue is called the Old New Synagogue, and it was built in 1270, and it's the oldest synagogue in Central Europe. And you can visit the interior to see Gothic style pillars, arches, and windows. And after 700 years, it is still a working synagogue. And it's called the Old New Synagogue because when it was built, it was new, and now it's old. So at some point it transitioned over. They couldn't call it just new anymore, so it was the Old New synagogue.
That's how long history is in Prague. You
Yeah.
can't just have old and new,
Yeah.
you also have to have old new.
And you can also visit the Jewish cemetery, which there are 12,000 tombstones in the Jewish cemetery. And from 1439 to 1787, this was the only place in town where Jewish people could be buried. And graves were also piled on top of each other. So while there are only 12,000 there are only 12,000 tombstones visible, there are actually about 85,000 people buried here. So just imagine all the layers of history. The cemetery is actually higher than the rest of the town because so much has been stacked on top of each other. Yes. And it's special also, you might see over here, if you see any pebbles on a Jewish tombstone in general, it's a sign, or it's a custom to show that they have not been forgotten, this grave. And it started years ago, I read, because they would put a pebble on a sandy grave to keep the body covered. But so that's a nice custom to see as you're walking around. You can understand what that's for. And today, there are only about 1,700 Jews in Prague today, but they're a proud community that keeps this legacy living on. And many of these sites are part of the Jewish Museum in Prague, except the old new synagogue. And Rick calls this the most interesting collection of Jewish sites in Europe. And I think I would agree, because there is a lot to see, and they were confined to this ghetto for centuries. And so there's just so much history there. This area was part of that destruction in the late 19th century, where they took down a lot of the old kind of ramshackle buildings. Those have been replaced with Art Nouveau buildings at the time, which is also a sight to see.
We're going to transition now from some historical experiences you can have to some shows you can see. If you want a whimsical experience in Prague, I recommend the Black Light Theater. We've gotten these images from the Image Theater in Prague. And Black Light Theater is really just using black lights and fluorescent costumes to make these kind of psychedelic and sometimes absurdist variety shows. While this type of performance began in Asia, it has really found its home in Prague, which is now the primary hub of this type of theater. It features multiple theater companies producing these whimsical shows. Tickets cost only about $35, and it will, if nothing else, the experience will be memorable.
And we can't talk about Prague without talking about music. We had a guest on at Monday Night Travel a while ago, and she said there's a Czech saying that every Czech is a musician. And you see that in Prague. No matter where you look, you're seeing a poster advertising a show of some sort happening that night. And this is a picture of a show I went to with my aunt, and there's a woman up top there just belting out opera in this beautiful old church. And as Rick says again, he said, music takes on a delightful dimension listening in a church like this. And this is something you can do throughout Prague. And the ticket prices are about half as much as they are in Vienna. So it's a good deal as well. And I think the energy of Prague kind of vibrates like the strings of a quartet. Mozart and Dvorak came here and they were inspired. And I think it's fun also to be in these churches, because you can think, hey, you know what famous musician also played here? You know, they heard their music here, and now we are also hearing their music here. So that's just another way that Prague connects you directly to the past of all these people that we've heard of our whole lives. And here we wanted to have a little special moment, because this song is by Bedřich Smetana, a Czech composer, and he wrote this song in 1874 as he was inspired by the Vltava River, which flows through Prague. And this song is famous for the Czech people. And they say whenever they hear it, they feel as if they are home. And I just wonder, what do you feel when you hear this song? And you just feel the wisdom of the Vltava River flowing by. That song moves me every time. I've listened to it many times now, and I get chills every time. And now we're throwing it back to Ben and Marta. What do you guys have? Activities.
Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Gabe. These are some excellent activities. All right, we're moving just a few hours away to Budapest once again. One of my favorite activities in the city is a walking tour, either on your own with a guidebook like Rick Steves' Guide to Budapest, or with a local guide that you've hired. Walking across the Danube is a particular treat. This is the chain bridge, guarded by lions, which symbolize power. It was the city's first bridge, and it offers a pedestrian way to cross from Buda to Pest and the other way around. Before this bridge was built, people needed boats or a good freeze to cross the river. There's a famous story that in the 19th century, a city leader was stuck on one side for days trying to get to his father's funeral. He was so frustrated, he commissioned building of this first bridge. And the Danube is bigger than Prague's Vltava, and so that might explain why a bridge was not built across the Danube in Budapest for quite a few years after when Prague first got its bridge. The chain bridge, finished in 1849, immediately became an important symbol of the city. The bridge, like many others, was destroyed in the Second World War, but was thankfully painstakingly rebuilt in its original style. Walking across the chain bridge, you cannot help but be struck by the historic power of this capital city. The dramatic lions, the spectacularly lit Buda Castle and Parliament building, all serve as a reminder that Budapest was Vienna's junior partner in power over many lands, including Prague. The Liberty Bridge, also built as part of the 1896 celebrations, is the shortest bridge and another pedestrian thoroughfare. Not every capital city offers hiking in its downtown core. Now, I love a good hike, and in Budapest, you don't need to leave the city to get a little hiking experience in. Budapest here has Gellert Hill. Steep walkers are rewarded with sweeping views of the city. Sunset only enhances the scene. I remember sitting atop Gellert Hill with a Hungarian chimney cake, thinking there was no other place I would rather be. Budapest also boasts a variety of high-quality museums. Among my favorite is the very special Memento Park. This is an open-air museum dedicated to statues and plaques from Hungary's communist period. After being independent between the world wars, Hungary was under Soviet rule until 1989. The architect who designed this park, and he actually won the competition to design it, said, "This park is about dictatorship. And at the same time, because it can be talked about, described, and built, this park is about democracy. After all, only democracy is able to give the opportunity to let us think freely about dictatorship." And for me, that symbolizes why Budapest is one of my favorite cities. As a student of history, Hungary's tumultuous past is presented so vividly, and it is so valued throughout. The darker side of Hungary's 20th century story is also displayed at the House of Terror. This building, another Andrassy Boulevard site, was the headquarters of the Nazis and then the communist secret police. Today, the museum uses highly conceptual, bombastic exhibits to document terrible moments in Hungary's history. It is a very well presented museum. And then there is Budapest at Christmas time, when its nighttime light displays go to a whole new level. There are several Christmas markets every year in Budapest. The city's markets are known for their beautiful wooden stalls and diverse handmade crafts for sale. One of our colleagues who went to Budapest at Christmas time several years ago said she felt that Budapest's Christmas markets were the best she had seen across several of the Central European cities she visited.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. I am so excited to talk about the thermal baths in Budapest. You absolutely cannot visit Budapest without taking the plunge into Hungary's famous mineral-rich baths and soaking your stress away in the water. Locals actually brag that if you poke a hole in the ground anywhere in Hungary, you'll find a hot water spring. What we're looking at here are the famous Széchenyi baths, iconic for these 19th century style Baroque yellow domes. There are actually around 20 thermal baths in Hungary. Here are the Gellert baths, famous for their Art Nouveau decor. What you'll find at a typical bath complex is multiple pools used for different purposes. You'll have big pools with cooler water for swimming, smaller hot thermal baths for relaxing. You'll find saunas, steam rooms, cold plunge pools, sunbathing areas. Many baths also have bubbles, whirlpools, massage jets, wave pools, and so on. You can expect to pay about a fraction of the cost you'd pay at any spa in a Western country. So about $30 for admission, and you can rent a towel there, but a quick tip, just bring your own. You can borrow one from your hotel. And I thought this was so interesting. Doctors in Hungary actually regularly prescribe treatments to their patients that include massage, soaking in the baths of various heat and mineral compositions, and swimming laps. The minerals are supposedly helpful for easing arthritis, joint pains, and other ailments. And for these patients, a visit to the baths is subsidized. When I traveled to Budapest, when I first arrived, I was actually quite sick. I had been traveling for several months, and the exhaustion and the jet lag of backpacking through Europe finally got to me. So I ended up soaking in the thermal baths, and it was absolutely rejuvenating. Like I said, one of my favorite experiences ever. I truly couldn't have picked a better city for a much needed reset. Here we have the Rudas baths, which are 400-year-old Turkish baths, a product of Hungary's former Ottoman rule. Upstairs, they have a wellness section with more pools, a restaurant with a gorgeous view of the Danube River, and a sun deck with a hot tub with another fantastic view of downtown Budapest.
That looks fantastic.
I wish I could go there right now. Thermal baths are also an excellent insight into local culture. You'll find chess-playing old-timers and Speedo-clad sunbathers. There is no better way to relax and unwind and soak in Hungary's spa culture. And finally, what better way to round out a fulfilling day of sightseeing, eating, exploring, and bathing than with an evening boat cruise on Budapest's impressive Danube River, which courses through the two sides of this elegant city. Panoramic boats carry passengers by day and by night. Budapest, though, is known, like we said, for its gorgeous nighttime lighting. So while this experience is beautiful at any time of day, it's especially worthwhile at twilight. You'll go up and down the river and see the grand layout of the city and its gorgeous riverfront architecture on both sides of the river. Buda, where the castle sits up on a hill, and Pest, where Parliament and the commercial center are. I'd say there's probably no better way than to cap off a day.
All right. And with that, it is time to vote on which city had better activities. Boy, oh boy, I love the baths personally.
I can't get enough of the baths.
Ben and Marta, I just want to say there were no rubber duckies in those baths, so they were subpar. No,
you're supposed to bring your own,
rubber
Gabe.
ducky less.
It's BYOD. Bring your own duck, Gabe.
All right. Well, I'll stay somewhere where I can see a castle and a black light show in, half a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I can take a bath at home anytime.
Yeah.
Can you take a
Some
bath?
Epsom salts in there.
I actually did that a few days ago. Yeah, the salt is quite nice. But can you take a bath with a view like the ones
Did you
get
play
in
chess with
Budapest?
yourself?
I actually don't know how to play chess, Gabe.
Oh.
Well, I was not.
All right, well, I'll have just 5 more seconds here for Prague, Budapest. And there we go. Thank you for submitting.
Excellent. Thank you, Julianne.
All right. I'm hungry, Ben and Marta.
Yes, I am as well. Actually, I'm very hungry. So that is why it is perfect timing for the cuisine topic. Let's get started. And it is Budapest up first.
That's right. All right, well, if you're hungry and hungry, you're in luck. Rick Steves himself has called Hungarian cuisine, and I quote, the undisputed best in Central Europe. And I'd even argue among the best in all of Europe, What do you say, Ben?
I agree.
When it comes to Budapest's food scene, we're not talking starchy, bland meat and potatoes. We're talking food that is bright, authentic, rich, bit heavy in a good way, and bursting with flavor and spice, always flavored with Hungary's famous paprika. When in Budapest, you absolutely must visit the Great Market Hall, which is the largest market hall in the city. Great Market Hall offers 3 floors of fresh fruits and vegetables, dairy products, meats, salamis, fish, wines, as well as locally grown peppers of different spice levels, colors, shapes, and sizes, which are used to make Hungary's famous paprika, which is available in 2 different kinds, spicy and sweet. A less touristy, more authentic and local market hall is Belvárosi Piac on Hold Street. On the bottom floor is delectable produce, while the upper floor is filled with affordable, good quality stands featuring schnitzels, sausage, gourmet burgers, Thai-style cuisine, as well as great Hungarian classics. I recommend you go to the Great Market Hall, but you eat at Belvárosi Piac. Speaking of Hungarian classics, when in Budapest, you must try the famous goulash. It is one of the national dishes of Hungary and a symbol of the country. Goulash is a broth spiced with, you guessed it, robust paprika, as well as onions, garlic, crushed caraway seeds, and then made hearty with big chunks of meat and potatoes. And Ben, we actually have some here today that we are enjoying. And I'll turn it right over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Marta. I do love a good goulash, and the Great Market Hall is an excellent place for it, as is Belvárosi. I have the great pleasure of introducing to you Kurtos Kalács. This is a Hungarian chimney cake and a classic street food of Budapest. It is a treat native to Hungary, of course. It is from the Transylvanian area, kind of in the eastern part of Hungary, and then over into what is Romania, because all of Transylvania, or a large portion of it that is today in Romania, was once part of Hungary. Now, these chimney cakes have spread to other regions, including Prague, but Hungary is their native home. And Hungarian street food is so good that it's no surprise that the Czech capital has so well adopted it in recent years. There's nothing I love more than walking around Budapest with a chimney cake in hand, as I was here back in 2016. To make Kurtos Kalács, special dough is coiled around prized wooden spindles and topped with sugar. Then they are placed like a rotisserie chicken over hot coals. Once the sugar has melted and become crystal, they are taken off the fire and doused with flavors such as cinnamon sugar, nuts, and coconut. Now in a paper sleeve, they are ready to enjoy. You'll see Kurtos Kalács stands on busy street corners, parks, and anywhere people are out having fun. If you receive one that's not hot, don't hesitate to ask for one that's warmer. This is when they are at their best, soft, and absolutely delectable. Budapest also has a very fine cafe and pastry scene. By 1900, there were more than 600 cafes in the city. Cafes were booming in this era, just like they were in Paris and Vienna. Today, some only serve coffee and pastry, but many others, like this one you see here, serve full meals as well.
So Budapest, of course, has upscale restaurants, like Ben said, really fine cafes where you can fine dine and wine. It also has a top-notch nightlife scene where you can enjoy a beer, cocktails, some street food, some communist-era soft drinks. These bars, this is so interesting, they're called ruin bars. If you don't know what a ruin bar or ruin pub, if you don't know what a ruin pub is, it is something that started in early 2000s Budapest. It's a bar inhabiting an old building, generally in a ramshackle condition with secondhand furniture, kind of has a colorful junkyard vibe, usually filled with twinkle lights and mismatched decor, graffiti, potted plants. Ruin pubs can range from high energy dancing nightclubs to more mellow, hammock-filled hangouts, and each one really has its own personality. Locals and tourists alike frequent ruin pubs, so it's an excellent chance to get in touch with local culture. And people of all ages are welcome. You can really find a ruin pub for everybody. In the cooler months, the cozy interiors are an inviting way to spend an evening out. But ruin pubs also pretty much always have courtyards or rooftops, which are perfect in the beautiful summer weather and offer excellent city views. Another quick tip, for a detailed ruin pub crawl, check out the entertainment chapter of Rick Steves' Budapest guidebook.
I do love a good ruin pub. That is simply one of a kind in Budapest.
One of a kind.
Now, Hungary has 22 wine producing regions, and wine has long been a quality product of the country. During the communist period, many vineyards were nationalized and the quality of the product tended to decline. But since 1989, a large number of families have reclaimed their ancestral vineyards and reestablished the nation as a strong producer of both red and white wine. Budapest has a handful of excellent wine bars, many of which feature over 100 types of Hungarian wine at fantastic prices. Trying a new local Hungarian wine is one of my favorite things to do in Budapest. During a 2019 visit, I took part in a cooking class called Chef Parade. You can find a link to their website in the email that will go out tomorrow. We made goulash, strudel, and a cold Hungarian fruit soup. All three dishes were absolutely delicious. I highly recommend a personalized food experience of some kind when you're in Budapest, either a cooking class like I took here, a food tour, or in our guidebook, we also describe a unique opportunity in Budapest where you can meet with a local Hungarian and cook in their own home. And that, I think, is really just an incredible experience. So now you see why Marta and I are so excited to discuss cuisine with you in Hungary and in Budapest, because it is so special and so unique, from goulash to those ruined pubs, which I just love, to a cooking class experience like this. And we actually also have, in addition to goulash, we have a Hungarian dry white wine. So I would like to say cheers to everyone in Hungarian, and cheers to you, Marta. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, Ben. Shall we say egészségedre?
Egészségedre.
Egészségedre.
And to you, Julianne and Gabe. Egészségedre.
Well, we take your cheers and we raise you na zdravé. As the Czechs say, the best wine is beer. And we have some Czech beer here with us.
Pardubice.
Yes. One of the best parts of going to Prague is enjoying the beer. They're renowned for their beers. It's usually a Pilsner, lager, a lighter beer. And it has to be a lighter beer because they drink an average adult 80 gallons of beer every year, which I can't imagine drinking 80 gallons of Guinness every year. So you have to have something like this. And the Czechs love it. It's inexpensive. My aunt made me drink beer when I was in Prague because it's cheap and because it's good. And so it's really a fun part of your experience when you're in Prague. And here's some people enjoying their beers outside. Take a moment, have a beer, just like the Czechs. This is actually a viewer submission. They sent a photo to share at ricksteves.com. This was Margaret and Bob in a beer hall enjoying a beer.
So like Julianne said, the Czech people drink a lot of beer. In fact, they drink the most beer per capita of any country in the world and have held that title for about 10 years. So there's no better place to sling back a Pilsner than at a Czech beer hall, where locals spend a large portion of their life. Prague boasts a large series of cheery and atmospheric beer halls. You can imagine people seated along these many long tables on a Friday night, a boisterous crowd enjoying a pint or a liter or a couple liters. They have to keep up that title. Medvědicu is the city's best known beer hall and brewery. It has been brewing since 1466 and brews one of the oldest wheat beers in the world. Today, the Beer Titan also has a hotel, and if you liked the whole bath content from Budapest, you can take a bath infused with brewer's yeast and hop oils Personally, I like having my beer inside me rather than the other way around. But if you want a nice hoppy spa treatment, check that out. There's also Malostranska Beseda, which is a refurbished town hall that has been converted to a brewery and serves everything from Czech classics to more chic vegetarian fare. So beer halls, again, are where a large portion of Czech life is lived. If you want to be around the locals, there's a wide selection and you can find a beer hall that fits your needs.
Another reason for needing to have a light beer is the delicious food that is available in Prague in the beer halls, for example. So there is dumplings that in Czech and Prague, especially, you can get dumplings, which I was thinking today, what are dumplings like? They're like little pillows of bread that they serve alongside whatever your main course is, and they're just absorbing all of those sauces, and you bite into them and they just kind of melt in your mouth. And I was thinking, it's the best thing since sliced bread, boiled bread, which is true. It's so good. You put it alongside anything and it's just a delicious part of your meal. This was in Prague when I was there with my aunt. That's one of the beers she forced me to have. And we also have goulash over in Prague. Instead of kind of the brothy, paprika-y goulash that they have over in Hungary, also good, they have more of a thicker stew-like goulash in Prague. And with those dumplings, it's probably one of my favorite meals I've ever had. They put the onions on top there to kind of freshen it up. But yeah, you'll definitely need a light beer with this because I don't think you could stomach it with anything else.
All right, and we are going to finish, of course, with dessert. Few topics excite me more than pastries, as my friends know, and I'm not sure that I've ever had more cake per day than when I was in Prague. These next few photos are all my photos from, I only had, I think, 2 full days in Prague. When I lived in Ballard's Seattle neighborhood, Seattle's Ballard neighborhood, I used to go to a place called the Little Prague Bakery in the Ballard Farmer Market, where Blanca would serve up fresh walnut rolls and collages. And I had high expectations when I went to her hometown of Prague, and I was not disappointed. I had on a rainy day a nice slice of honey cake. At a restaurant, I had a nice fresh slice of lemon meringue. One day in a cafe, I had a Black Forest gâteau and a sort of cheesecake pie of sorts. And I think that Prague does an excellent job of not just serving classic Czech treats, but also really offering a wide variety of European selections, making Prague a pan-European pastry paradise. Anybody in Prague tourism watching, you can use that one, pan-European pastry paradise. And another example of that is the Trdelník, or the chimney cake that Ben mentioned. In the same way that, you know, France is known for its croissants, but it came of Austrian origin. We know that this came from Hungarian, Romanian origin, but we're glad to take it from here and really perfect it. You can see them spit roasting these chimney cakes. And here is Julianne enjoying one in the Old Town Square. It makes a perfect midnight snack in floodlit Prague. So we also have some treats with us tonight. Julianne has for us the honey cake, one of my very favorites.
Yeah.
And I have a sort of poppy seed roll. As Jena told us in our Prague show back in April, the Czech people love a good poppy seed pastry. So bon appetit, Julianne.
Let's have it. Yeah.
Eager to see you cut into that.
This would be a mess if I cut into it now, but we'll dig into it later. That's for sure.
All right, so now that my mouth is full, it is time for me to call a vote on cuisine. So we would like to know, where would you rather travel for culinary experiences? Would you rather experience the cuisine of Budapest or the cuisine of Prague? Vote now.
It's all about the wine, Gabe and Julianne.
I think that's my fork. What'd you say, Ben?
It's all about the wine.
That's right.
Well, the wine, what's
best-
Yena's quote?
The best wine is beer, and that you can find in Prague.
Eh,
Here's you guys.
maybe when I was
That's-
younger. Maybe
How do
when
you
I was
say it in,
younger, it was the beer.
Yeah. How do you say cheers in Hungarian?
Roughly.
Ega shega day.
Second.
Ooh, that's harder than Nazdrave.
Hungarian is not the easiest language for English speakers, I think, but
Mhm.
very special.
Cake is excellent.
Good.
All right,
All right.
take 5 more seconds on that vote, and then we are going to move on.
All right, thank you, everyone. Oops.
All right. So we are going to move on to our final category for the evening, and that is day trips. When we go to major cities, it's great to experience the urban metropolis, but sometimes we also like to escape to some of the quieter corners. So first of all, if you loved Prague Castle, I have good news for you, because within a 45-minute drive of Prague, we have 3 other castles. We have Krivonklat, we have Konopishtie, and we have Karlstein. And if I didn't win your vote with those pronunciations, frankly, I don't know what more I can do. Fantastic castles to add to your list if you are a castle-hungry tourist. If you are wanting something that's a little bit more slice of life Czech Republic, we recommend Culinary, which Rick describes as the best Czech stop outside of Prague. It offers an honest, untouristy look at Prague life. The town is best known for its Sedlec bone church, which features pyramids and decor constructed from the bones of 40,000 people, which is twice the population of modern-day Culinary. The monks who built these built the skeletal structures, believed that to live well, we have to remember that we die, and we have to make the most of this life while we're living it. Fortunately, Culinary also has plenty for the living. It has a nice strollable historic core that includes a cathedral, tea houses, and museums to bohemian art and industry.
Continuing on outside of Prague is the Terezin concentration camp. And this was actually a fortified city built in the 1700s, which the Nazis came in and they took it over, they kicked out the inhabitants, and they turned it into a place for the Jews of Prague. And they were brought here. It was set up for propaganda. It was interesting learning more about this. And so when the Red Cross came in, they said, oh, look, this is a Jewish town. And so they had this whole fake thing going on. They told people what to say. And of course, they were hiding the atrocities below. And in the fall of 1944, the Nazis started transporting the Jews from Terezin to other concentration camps or extermination camps like Auschwitz, where many of them met their end in the death chambers. And visiting things like this, there's cemeteries that are there. There's Jewish cemeteries and some Russian cemeteries. There was a disease outbreak when the Russians came in towards the end of the war. There's also a hidden synagogue behind a bakery. So there's memories of people persevering even in these horrific times. And it can be challenging to visit places like this during your travels, but it's also so important to visit these things to remember. And when I saw this picture of people walking along, these are just weeds and flowers poking up. When I saw it, I thought it was just a thought that popped in my head, but it was like the people that are here saying, thank you for coming and thank you for remembering. And so it's somber, it's heavy, but it's important to consider what happened to these people and why the Jewish community of Prague is so small today.
And one of the best ways to broaden our perspectives
Exactly.
is to do difficult things.
Yes. Continuing on, kind of another place that you think of when you think of World War II is Dresden. This is just under 2 hours from Prague, and that's in a bus. So it's a pretty easy day trip over there. And this has one of the most picturesque skylines, I think, in Europe. We drove through on my way to Prague. And it's known to Europeans today as a vibrant city. This is the Parade of Nobles, which was made in the late 1800s, but then it was redone in porcelain in around 1907. And so there are a lot of things to see. Rick says the sites even rival Munich and Berlin with the museums they have here, which is saying a lot. They have porcelain museums, they have some armory museums, they have some museums filled with treasures from the Saxon rulers, so there's a lot to see here. I think, myself included, many Americans think of the bombing of Dresden when they think of Dresden. This is a picture after the bombing of Dresden, which I think is popular among Americans for the book by Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five. And there are even some Slaughterhouse-Five Kurt Vonnegut tours when you go to Dresden. But this was after the bombing in 1945. And more than 25,000 people were killed in this bombing, and it was just a firestorm throughout the city. And it took a long time for them to rebuild, of course, and it wasn't until after the reunification of Germany later in the later 1900s that they started to rebuild, and they've created something that is really a beautiful place to visit today. This is the Frauenkirche, which is kind of the symbol of the city, and it's the heart of the city. This was destroyed during the bombing, but it smoldered for 2 days before it collapsed. And so it kind of represents the heart and the soul of the city. And it's rebuilt today, and it's a proud city. And I think definitely a place that is worth visiting.
And to finish things off, if you were saying that a lack of thermal baths was a strike against Prague, I have good news for you. We have, as a convenient day trip from Prague, Karlovy Vary, which is a spa town. You can walk down this kind of main drag and visit various colonnades. It sits atop 16 natural springs, and you can go into a place like this, the Market Colonnade, and you can pay a little admission fee, and you get a cup and you get some wafers, and you can sample the healing waters of these various mineral springs. And the wafers are to help with the aftertaste, because while they are supposedly healthy for you, some of them are like medicine in that way. They might not taste the best afterwards. And additionally, in addition to the 16 springs that you can sample, there are also 3 public thermal baths that you can enjoy, as well as some private ones at various hotels if you want to make a spa weekend out of it. So we think that these are a wide variety of day trips that would give you a varied experience of the Czech Republic and the greater area around Prague, and that complement the great urban city of Prague well. Ben and Marta, we'd love to hear what day trips you have from Budapest.
Thank you, Julianne and Gabe. So I'm going to start with a little bit of general information about travel from Budapest. Hungary has a very good train system that has really been improving in recent years. Here you see a train ticket for travel between Budapest and Vienna from the Hungarian National Railways. The ticket came to 38 euro, not a bad price, I think. Travel between Budapest and major Hungarian towns and cities is relatively easy by public transportation. The Hungarian railway system is actually known for offering a plethora of discounts for dogs, seniors, kids, and they famously offered ticket prices for monkeys on their website.
Well, that's good news for my pet monkey. Yeah, thanks, Ben. Well, for our first day trip out of Budapest, we are going to venture over across the Danube, Ben, to Szentendre. So a top day trip from Budapest is to ride the train 45 minutes north and visit this colorful cobblestone town of Szentendre. You can stroll through the art galleries and shops. You can explore little cute alleyways. It's surrounded by these vibrant, colorful old houses and churches. Szentendre also has a long tradition as an artist's colony, has some really fantastic museums and again, galleries as well. And another fantastic day trip that you can take from Budapest is to the vibrant town of Eger. It's at the heart of the wine region, back to wine, in the north of Hungary, and it is an easy day trip from Budapest. It's about 2 hours by train or bus, so doable in a single day. Eger is very walkable. It's a charming town. It has more beautiful Baroque buildings like this Minorite church we see here. You can stroll through its colorful produce market, and of course, visit the nearby countryside vineyards from this world-famous surrounding wine region. Just a little outside of Eger is this winemaking village, internationally recognized for its bull's blood red wine, which is a blended red. You can take a cellar tour here and go for a wine tasting. One winery we recommend is St. Andrea Winery, pictured here. It is a top winery in the Eger region, and it's run by a local Hungarian father and son. And you know I'm going to talk about bats again. Can't stop me. Near the St. Andrea Winery, you can also experience one of the best thermal baths in all of Hungary. This is the Salt Hill Thermal Spa. It's an open air spa in a scenic valley. Before entering the spa pools, the steaming water runs down a series of cascades from a reservoir located under the volcanic nearby Matra mountain range. I would say, Ben, that this would be an excellent way to combine a visit to the nearby winery with a visit to the spa. What do you say?
That sounds wonderful. Very relaxing.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to offer a backdoor day trip suggestion. This is Balaton, beginning about 1 hour west of Budapest. It is the largest lake in Central Europe. It's even larger than Lake Geneva.
Wow.
I was out on a short afternoon cruise here. The mild blue water is really just stunning and it's excellent for relaxing. I was really able here more than anywhere else to talk with a few locals because I was one of the few tourists around. And I certainly highly recommend you do that when in Hungary. Hungarians are very witty. In fact, there is a famous joke that claims that when Hungarians enter a revolving door behind you, they will exit it in front of you. Love it. The jewel of Balaton, with some of the highest property values in the country, is Tihany. But this historic, delightful little town features an abbey monastery founded in 1055. Here, you can rent a bike and explore, go for a swim, or try your hand at sailing on the lake. Tihany town is extremely charming with lovely restaurants and shops. There are a few small museums, including one on the science of flora and fauna around Balaton. Nearby is the world's second largest geothermal lake with unique mineral composition that is famous for helping with joint and body circulation. Altogether, the Lake Balaton area is a great off the beaten path destination and a wonderful place in Hungary to see a fine small town and perhaps even have a vacation from your vacation. One of my favorite day trips from Budapest is Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. Not unlike Budapest itself, it is a bit underrated. Bratislava is a smaller city of 400,000, and it is also located on the Danube. It's between Budapest and Vienna. St. Martin's Cathedral, seen here, is where 19 Hungarian kings and queens were crowned. While Slovakia was part of Czechoslovakia from 1918 to 1992, it was part of Hungary before then, in Austria-Hungary. Bratislava features a charming, compact old town. Among its many whimsical statues is Kumil the Peeper, a man at work. And of course, he's not working too hard. This poor guy has been run over multiple times, by the way, because he's right on the edge of the sidewalk and he still looks great. So I think he represents the resilience of people really from this entire region. It is supposedly good luck to pat him on the head and thank him for his many years of good labor. Now, Slovakian cuisine is extremely rich and delicious. It has Austrian and Hungarian influence, but it's overall a little bit closer to Czech. Here I was trying kofola, which I really love, actually. It's a Czech-Slovak version of Coke, and potato dumplings with sheep cheese and bacon. This is actually the national dish. The quality and very reasonably priced meals in Bratislava make it a worthwhile place to really dine out and enjoy. Perhaps the city's most prominent landmark is Bratislava Castle, which is perched on a hilltop and provides excellent views. The Habsburg Empress Maria Theresa transformed this structure from a castle to a royal residence. In recent years, the castle has received a thorough rebuild. While not perhaps the most striking castle in Europe, Bratislava Castle stands testament to the Slovak capital's long domination under foreign rule. Today, as an independent country, Slovakia and this castle here are thriving like never before.
Okay, now that we've ventured out of both Prague and Budapest, it's time for you to decide which destination has the more desirable day trips.
It's real close, guys. neck and neck.
It-
Ooh, Dresden, that's pretty
Sounds
cool.
like
That
Bratislava,
Bratislava,
gotta do it.
Okay,
wine
I-
country.
and throw in
Germany's a
Vienna.
different country, yeah.
Germany's
You know,
still, I
yeah.
loved Dresden was one of my
Yeah.
highlights of my last trip.
I think I'm just a
Dresden.
huge fan of Slaughterhouse 5, Kurt Vonnegut, so it'd be special to go there for that.
Did you know, and I think this is correct, but Vienna and Bratislava are the two closest national capitals in the world. I think that's true. They're very close together. And it's remarkable because they were separated by the Iron Curtain.
That is interesting.
Interesting.
All right,
All right.
and here we go. Thank you, everyone.
All right. And now I think we're going to hear a little bit from our audience.
Okay, excellent. Yes, we have received some great audience submissions.
That's right. In our past Destination Duel episodes, we received so many wonderful comments and photos from all of you about the cities that we discussed. And this time we decided to share some of them to let you weigh in with your personal experiences for the final vote.
That's right, Marta. We received many comments in support of Budapest. Debbie and Dan here shared this image with us of their great visit. They are enjoying sweeping Danube views. Laura seems to have taken a liking to Budapest's 1200 statues. This particular one is known as Girl with Her Dog statue. It's just near the Danube. We also received many excellent comments. Kristen wrote, Budapest is for me. I felt like that I was able to really immerse myself in the culture. Peter shared with us, Budapest, the Paris of the East. It's a beautiful, walkable city that has amazing restaurants and classic European architecture. Claire wrote, I liked Prague. I loved Budapest. Another viewer shared, Budapest, fortunate to visit during the Christmas market, so amazing. Just a few streets over and across the bridge from it was historic Budapest. It was a wonderful 3-day stay. I would love to return. I would like to thank everyone for their wonderful comments and photos. All right, Prague, over to you.
All right, well, it's interesting. We actually had some echoes, I think you'll see, between the comments that you got and the ones that we got, and some people that feel similarly, but in opposite directions.
Yeah, here we had some of our viewer submission photos, and this one in the middle was super cool from Pat. This was on a trip. He was in Prague in 1972 when there was a communist monument right there in Wenceslas Square. So that was super cool to receive that picture. Thank you, Pat.
We heard from Lance, who said, Prague is really beautiful. It feels like you went back into the old times. So just like we were saying, it's a time capsule of a city.
Al said, enjoyed Budapest, but loved Prague. It is compact and pretty as a picture. Went to Prague first, then Budapest, and the latter city seems so big. I think a good comparison is Budapest is like London and Prague is like Paris.
Susan said, I have been to both. Prague is the winner. I am glad we went to Budapest in 2009, but I loved Prague, a beautiful, well-kept city. The people that live there are very proud of their city. Not so much in Budapest. In fact, the locals told us the best place to visit was Prague.
Alan said, I've been to and liked both, but I'd pick Prague these days. As to me, it seems more welcoming.
Linda said, I've been to both, but Prague is just special with its architecture, food, history, and I love beer, which they are great at.
And to wrap it up, we have a comment from Stephen. He just said, Prague, exclamation point, and then in parentheses, and I'm Hungarian.
All right, so now that we've heard from you, thank you again for chiming in on social media with those comments. We are going to wrap up tonight's debate with brief closing arguments. And I would just like to, well, I suppose first throw things over to Julianne to kick ours off.
Well, as we've mentioned throughout the presentation tonight, Prague is a time capsule. And I think every city kind of has a personality, and we found that Prague is just proud. It's proud of its history. It's proud that it survived all these things and still has its beauty and its soul. And it's just a special place to visit. And I like to think of when visiting Prague, just it's like the city saying, look where I've been, look where I am now. And then imagine where I'm going. And as a visitor, you get to kind of put your stamp or put your mark on the city and have a great time doing it.
As Julianne said, Prague is a time capsule with a rich and layered history. At the beginning of the debate, though, I started by saying that Prague is a fairy tale, and I stand by that. It offers castles and romance and sweet treats and beautiful, welcoming people. But I forgot one more thing. A fairy tale has a moral too. It teaches you something, and Prague does that too. Prague teaches thoughtful travelers that a literacy in history enhances modern life. Prague teaches us that investments in art and innovation ensure a successful society both now and in the future. But most of all, Prague teaches us that at the end of a long day of learning and exploration, it's all right to simply walk around a beautiful city and let it be beautiful. So we hope that we've convinced you that Prague is not just storied and historic and nuanced and interesting, but that it is a gorgeous place and should be a fairy tale destination on your next trip.
Well, thank you, Team Prague. Now on to Ben and I. When I think of Budapest, one word really comes to mind, and that word is unique. And many aspects of Budapest, they seem foreign and unique, but that is what I like most about it, because that's what makes it so rewarding and worthwhile. Because I adore Western Europe, but when I venture farther east, what I crave is something deeper, richer, less touristy, different from what I'm used to, and that is Budapest. I enjoyed every minute of my time in Budapest: cafe mornings, midday city hikes, afternoon museum tours, evening earthy thermal baths, twilight boat cruises, and one of the best nightlife scenes in all of Europe. It has so much to offer at any time of day or night, and it is just something different, something exotic, something, like I said earlier, spicier. Everyone I know who's been to Budapest has enjoyed it so much that they want to return for another visit, and then another, and then another. And I have found that when people discover Budapest, while that might not first be on their radar as much as a city like Prague, once they discover Budapest, they cannot get enough.
Well said, Marta. The two of us are so excited to and happy to have shared with you why we love Budapest. Hungarians, as I hope you've seen tonight, have really prioritized their traditional culture, and this shines through in the city's history and its architecture and style. Surrounded by Slavic nations, Budapest is a city unlike any other, as Marta said. It receives far fewer tourists than Prague, allowing for less crowded sites and streets, as well as lower prices and a more authentic overall experience. It is a center of late 19th century architecture, offers one of Europe's best Christmas market scenes, and has fantastic, unrivaled, arguably, nightlife with ruined pubs, cafes, and more. With a powerful Jewish heritage as well, and origins back to the Volga and points east, Budapest is a melting pot with surprises around every corner. Actually, I'm going to read a quote from one of my friends who is a frequent traveler and went to Budapest recently. And he's been several times, I stand corrected.
And a staff member at Rick Steves Europe.
Okay, you give that away as well. I've long used Budapest as my barometer of someone's travel chops. If a person is turned off by Budapest, well, I'm not saying they're a bad traveler. I'm just saying I probably won't plan a trip with them. But if someone comes back from Budapest raving, I know we're in sync. I remember once co-leading a tour with a Czech guide who's born and raised in Prague. I finally confessed, you know, I like Prague, but I have to admit, I like Budapest even more. Of course, the guide from Prague said, without hesitation. Of course you do. I do too. So thank you so much for listening to us share with you why we love Budapest. I hope you've seen why its sophistication, uniqueness, and style are so prominent. All right, and with that, I think it's time, if I'm not mistaken, for our final vote. This vote is worth more than the previous votes we've had so far tonight. So please join in and cast your vote.
Well, Ben, since you invoked a staff member, Julianne and I know a certain specific staff
Don't say
member
it yet, Gabe, it's not
that-
fair.
that prefers Prague. We won't name names either.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It would be interesting to ask the staff here at Excuse Europe what their preference is, like Paris and London, which kicked off the destination duels. Which one? Whose was his favorite?
Well, while those votes trickle in, we do have just a very brief word from our sponsor tonight. Kind of a no-brainer here is our Prague and Budapest tour. Again, we loved debating the two tonight, but all four of us think that both of these locations are excellent, and you can go to both on our 8-day Prague and Budapest tour, along with an excellent and knowledgeable guide. And secondly, I also wanted to make sure that you were all aware of our Rick Steves Europe scavenger hunt. It's a new thing that we're kicking off this year. If you are going to be going to Europe later this year, we encourage you to go to ricksteves.com, just in the search bar, look for our scavenger hunt. And we have devised a series of things to keep your eye out for. These are not meant to distract from your travels. Rather, they're meant to guide your attention, to encourage learning, and just to make your travels more fun. Challenge one of your travel partners so you can find the most, challenge yourself, but you can find that scavenger hunt at ricksteves.com, and feel free to share any of your photos on social media. We would love to share some on a future Monday Night Travel. With all that said, I think that Julianne has our results.
Yes. I just have to fix the PowerPoint slide here. What do you guys think it's gonna be?
Well,
So
I
I
excited.
think it's gonna be fairly close.
Yes.
It was actually very close.
Yes.
All
All right.
right.
I think what's cool about our tour, you can go on both. Why choose? All right, are you guys ready?
We're so ready.
And it is Prague.
Oh, well,
Very close. In fact, Budapest won 3 out of the 4 categories. It won activities, cuisine, and day trips. But Prague won art and architecture by the widest margin of any category, and then won the overall impression.
Yes.
So
Yeah. As always, it's so much fun. We love this too because we learn so much about places we've been and places we've never been. And so it's always fun having a destination duel.
Also, I think, Ben, that's out of 3 duels. I think we really needed to win because you would have been undefeated.
Yeah.
that is true. That is true. Well, Prague is a great city, so I don't mind this being my first narrow defeat. So congratulations, Gabe and Julianne, and Marta. This was a real
Marta,
pleasure.
thank you
so
for
much.
your Monday Night
Marta,
Travel
you did
debut.
awesome.
It
I
was
had
wonderful.
so much fun. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor, and congratulations to Team Prague.
Woo.
But really, the answer is people should go to both places because they're not that far from each other.
That's the real answer. That's right.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have some closing announcements tonight. Thanks everyone for tuning in, but make sure to sign up for next week's show to see Lamar Chambly, who will talk about his time in Sevilla with his organization Teams of Color Abroad, which makes travel more accessible.
It's going to be a very, very cool show. I'll be hosting with Lamar, and he's excellent. There's going to be a lot to learn.
All right, good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.